You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Your chin picks up the best.
Okay.
Just for a picture.
Okay, thank you.
All right, before we inquire, we did have a quick sidebar this morning on an inquiry on the exclusionary order. That does not relate to this witness, correct? The sidebar?
No.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Mr. Pryor. So in this case, then, the witness is sworn, Ms. Price. I'll just have a few questions before we begin with your testimony. This trial has been publicly streamed online as well as reported in the news and open to the public here while it's taken place. Have you watched any of the testimony of any witness that's testified here in this trial?
No.
Okay. Have you talked to anyone else who has testified or talked to anyone about your testimony?
No.
Okay. Thank you for confirming that, Mr. Pryor. If you'd like to start with your direct, you may.
And Judge, before we start, I have Defense Exhibit 76 that I'm going to move for admission. It represents approximately a 2-minute interview with Ms. Price. My understanding is that the state, Ms. Beatty, is going to stipulate to its admission.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Very well. Defense Exhibit 76 then will be admitted.
Judge, if I may have 76 returned to me after it's marked and entered.
Okay, we'll have the clerks mark the exhibit and have that returned.
And while we're waiting, Judge, if I can start if you'd like, if I may.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and start with your direct, you may, and we'll just have the bailiff, now that he's got that, provide that to you, and then we can go.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Price.
Good morning.
And would you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yep, it's Reegan Price, and it's ReegenPrice.
And Ms. Price, at some point in 2018, 2019, you were a neighbor of Mr. Daybell and Tammy Daybell, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in relation,
I'm sorry, could I get you to kind of talk right close to that microphone? It only picks it up if you're right next to it. Thank you.
Mhm.
and you noted that that was correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Can you tell me, did you live south of them off of 200? Is that fair?
Yes,
And across the street on the Salem Highway would have been Joe and Emma Murray.
yes,
So then Joe and Emma would have been kitty corner to Chad. Is that correct?
yes.
I'd like to draw your attention to September 9th of 2019. It's noted that you, at some point during that time, there are some reports that you heard some sort of a gunshot on that day. Do you recall that?
I do remember hearing gunshots on a certain day. I'm not for certain which date that is.
Okay. Did
Um,
you, go ahead.
No, I'm,
Okay. And when you say gunshots, was it gunshots or gunshot?
to my knowledge, I remember there was maybe one, but
Okay. Okay. And to your recollection, you believe that it may or may not have been on September 9th?
I don't have a date.
Did you have an occasion to contact law enforcement and talk to them about that?
On a day that we did contact law enforcement, there was a couple things that we had discussed that was unusual, but it wasn't on that specific day with the shooting.
Okay. And at some point you've discussed this case with law enforcement on a couple of occasions. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay. One of those would have been on or around June 9th of 2020.
I don't know the date, but
Okay.
It-
And then again, you had one potentially on May 5th of 20. Do you recall that as well? A longer discussion?
mhm, yes.
Okay. And Judge, I'd like to publish Defense Exhibit 76, if I could.
You may.
I might need some assistance. Trying to, the volume if you could. We're going to get everybody to help.
And gotten across, because we weren't around them a lot, but the few times we were, it's easy to remember because we weren't around them a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for talking with me. I appreciate it. I'll let get back to your kids, and I'm sure we're all you're all over the news right now, Fox
You know
News,
what? I was
CNN.
actually kind of glad that, it wasn't all day. I'm like, are we gonna hear that like all day? Cause it was like nice. This is the most peaceful this road has
Right.
been in
Oh.
so long.
Don't have to worry about kids. They're
Yeah.
no one here, so.
Probably like this, not cartoons.
We seriously do, because we were gonna build our house this year, but I told you like we wanted to get the rest of our debt paid off before we built that. We're just gonna build back.
Judge, could we have just a moment?
Yes.
Let's get out of that first.
And to just clarify, was that part of Exhibit 76 that was being published there?
I believe so, Judge, yes.
Thank you.
Am I ready? Let's try again, Judge. You may want to stick around.
Found something.
Yeah. It's good. Everything's good right now. Everything's a good
I
thing.
didn't know
It's all
everything
good,
will
yeah.
come out eventually,
Yeah.
you know, just makes the
Yeah.
curiosity, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do I do? Well, it was just playing, right?
Yeah, but are you able to tell the timestamps?
I can't really tell the timestamps, but I want to play the entire 2 minutes. So it doesn't matter. I think we're ready, Judge.
All right, give me just a moment here. Let me consult with.
And
staff.
you're,
Want to have another person maybe take a look at that, Mr. Pryor, to see if any
we're gonna
additional
ask
assistance
probably-
on that device.
Where's that?
You heard a gunshot then?
Yeah, and it was like, and they said it was a raccoon. And it was about that same time, we had set the timeline to Ron, because we checked our phone and it was like the Rob Wood, is that the prosecuting? Okay. We had talked to them and we had looked it up on our phone records to try to put it together, you
Yeah.
know? But like our neighbors up here, like they will go shoot birds and stuff in the mornings. And so we'll hear that sometimes, but it was close. And like our bedroom window's right
Right.
here. And we sleep with the window open most of the time because
Did you see anybody out there?
no, but we just heard it. So that's what we were thinking. We're like, it wasn't afternoon because he would have been at work. That it would have been morning. so.
Morning. Huh.
Anyways, we'll just keep
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah, no, and even details that you're like, that's probably nothing. We take them, right?
Well,
I mean, at
that's
this
what we
point, we'll,
decided after we told him, because we're like, we sat on it for a while and then we're like, well, maybe it will help, so.
yeah, yeah,
Just our timeline experience with them.
Yeah.
Because we weren't around them a lot, but the few times we were, it's easy to remember because we weren't around them a lot.
yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for talking with me. I appreciate it. I'll let get back to your kids, and I'm sure we're all being,
Okay.
you're all over the news right now, Fox
You know
News,
what, I
CNN,
was
and-
actually kind of glad that, it wasn't all day. I'm like, are we gonna hear that like all day? Cause it was like nice. This is the most peaceful this road has
Right.
been in
Oh.
so long.
Don't have to worry about kids. They're
Yeah.
no one here, so.
Why not? Probably like this, not cartoon.
We seriously do, because we were gonna build our house this year, but I told you like we wanted to get the rest of our debt paid off before we built that. We're just gonna build that here. And we went out there to scope out where we were gonna put it, and I'm like, do you hear that? It's-
Judge, I can stop at this point.
Like just that much further away from it and you don't hear it. Cool. Good.
At least I think I can.
All right.
So, Ms. Price, you've heard the audio tape. And I believe that goes back to June 9th of 2020. Do you recall that now?
If that's the date, but yes, I remember that conversation that I had.
Okay. And then you made some comment that you heard a shot and there was some discussion about raccoons. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then there was a further discussion about you, and it's unclear who you provided a timeline to, but you provided a timeline to somebody. Do you recall?
So my husband and I both discussed just some strange events that happened with the Daybells over the last year.
Okay.
And it was my husband and I creating a timeline together because like I've stated, I don't have any dates,
Okay.
but there was enough going on that we were trying to figure out where everything was so that by the time we did talk to a detective or a police officer, it was informational and resourceful and beneficial to
And
them.
do you recall in a later interview where there was a discussion about you and your husband made some mention about that he'd be a really good detective? Do you remember that discussion?
I remember that in the audio, but
Okay.
that was my husband, not me.
Okay. And do you remember the discussion that you would work through Joe Murray to try to get some information about locating the kids
I do. I remember that.
and that you'd be willing to wear a wire?
I do. I remember that. There was children missing and I was willing to do whatever it took to find these children.
Right. And then in addition, there was some talk about the fact that your husband in the past had plowed up, done some cultivation for Joe's garden or something like that.
Yeah, that's correct. He did it for a lot of the neighbors around the
Right.
neighborhood.
And Officer K had offered to,
Objection, hearsay.
was there a discussion about using?
Hold on, there's a pending objection. It's sustained.
Was there a discussion about using police funds to help pay $50?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you engage in any discussion regarding accepting payment from the police to doing certain?
Objection, hearsay, misstates the evidence.
Overruled.
Did you do any kind of a discussion with the police for some sort of payment to work with the police and regarding the Daybell case?
I think in reference to that conversation that you're talking about, Officer K just comically said that, and it was more of a personal, it wasn't as an officer using officer funds.
And you took that as a joke, is that right?
I did.
All right, nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Beatty, cross-examination once you're ready.
Good morning, Ms. Price.
Hey.
Do you prefer that I call you Ms. Price or that I call you Regan?
Whatever you prefer.
Okay. I'll go with Ms. Price. So you testified that at some point you heard a gunshot, correct?
I did, yes.
And that was in the early morning? Was that your testimony?
I believe it was.
Do you remember what day that took place? I believe it was your testimony that you didn't remember the specific day.
Yes, I don't remember the date.
Do you remember the time frame?
I don't. Just looking back at the audio, being refreshed with that, but as far as it's been 4 years, to my knowledge, it was just based off of that. It was morning, afternoon time, but not a specific time.
Could it have been at some point before September 9th?
Definitely.
Could it have been at some point after September 9th?
I don't recall it was after September 9th.
Okay. And out in the country, is it uncommon for people to have guns?
No, it's very common for people to have guns.
Okay. Now, you briefly testified about your discussion with Officer K. Would that be Detective Kaya Kamanu?
It is, yes.
Okay. And you joked around with him?
Very briefly.
Did you ever accept payment from law enforcement?
Never.
Okay. And if I may have just one moment.
You may.
And I have no further questions for this witness.
All right, thank you, Ms. Beatty. Oh, hold on, we've got
Sorry.
direct possibly.
Sorry.
You may.
Ms. Price, you don't have a direct recollection of when you heard that gunshot, correct?
I don't.
But did you recall hearing on the audio tape that there was a combination of a gunshot, a raccoon, and the name Chad Daybell? How often does those three happen on a particular day?
Objection misstates the testimony, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Judge, I have nothing else. Thank you.
All right. That will conclude the testimony of this witness. I don't know if she's appearing under subpoena. If so, I'd like to inquire whether or not she can be released from the subpoena.
And Your Honor, I believe the state did have her under subpoena. We would release her from our subpoena at this point.
And Judge, the defense has her under subpoena and we're releasing her as well.
Okay, that concludes your testimony then. You can go ahead and leave.